Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to look at how to make a character, or in this case the camera, circle strafe around a target. So typically you see this in first person or third person action games where you click on a target so it locks onto the target, and then when you try to move left or right, your character rotates around the enemy either clockwise or counterclockwise, and yet they continue to face the enemy automatically. So let's look at how we're going to do that. So first, let's go to Game Object, 3D Object, and Plane. This is just meant to be the ground, so it's just meant to be a point of reference to make it easier to see that you're rotating around the object. Game Object, 3D Object, Cube. This will be the actual object that we're going to rotate around. I'm just going to grab that Y-axis and move it up just so it's not intersecting with the ground. Doesn't really matter. Again, just trying to make the objects more distinctive and separated. So the coding to make this work is actually quite simple. So basically the coding will be applied to the camera, and that when you do a key input, we're going to use keyboard input for this demonstration, but you can use an analog stick or whatever else you want to use. And that when the input is received, you rotate left or right, so clockwise or counterclockwise around the cube. So right click, create, C#, and we'll call this CamCon, short for camera control. We click on our camera, we take the CamCon, and we put it under the camera. Now we need to open up that script. So we're going to do this in a couple stages. So the first two iterations you're going to see is just temporary to make sure that the core code is working, and then we'll apply the keyboard input. So you can get rid of these remark statements. They don't get executed. Whenever you see that // it's a remark. It's just internal documentation. So now we need to create a variable to store the target. So basically this is how you make one object aware of another. So public transform, and we'll call this target obj. You can call it whatever you want. When I'm making a variable for an object, I like to use the obj suffix just so I know that it's an object and not just like a number or a string. Now this is going to look a little bit weird. So it's part of transform, and it's rotate around. So the three arguments are: what is the target, which direction around the target are you rotating, and the rate upon which you're rotating. So what you're rotating around, which direction you're rotating around, and how fast you're rotating around. So pretty straightforward. It's just going to look a little bit weird. So what the first argument is the position. So it's the target object, but specifically its position. So transform object. So target object.transform.position. This is pretty typical functionality that you'll see in a lot of MIS. And that is you're going from general to specific. So the target object, the transform component, and the position portion of the transform component. So that's the first argument. The second is the axis, and this is going to look weird. You would think it would be left or right. For some reason, it's actually up and down. This is the reason why I'm breaking this up into sections so you can see this part. And let's just do up. So that's the second argument, and that is the direction it's rotating, and the third is the rate. Let's just say 1. Now, we're not going to want this to automatically rotate, but again, I just want to demonstrate the core rotate around statement before we put in the key input. Okay, so what I forgot to do is, even though I created the variable, I didn't put the cube there. So see how we said target object? Well, we didn't declare it. So that cube is going to be the target object. So see what I mean? Even though we chose up, it's rotating around the cube. If you happen to know why, feel free to leave that in the comment section, but I've always just written it off as one of the odd things about Unity. Because what you're doing is you're rotating around the y-axis because you're both going left and right and forward and back. So you're rotating around the y-axis. So for whatever reason, up does it. So likewise, let's remark this out. We'll copy it. We'll paste it. And we'll change from up to down. And so now it's rotating the other way around the cube. Okay, so now what we need to do is we're going to get rid of the remark indicator, and now we're just going to put in a keyboard command. So if input dot get key, and we're going to use the A key, typical WASD movement. So if you're not familiar with this syntax, you're basically stating that you're looking for input. It's going to be a key type input, and it's the letter A. And now it's just rinse and repeat. Except it will be D. Let me save that. Also, get key instead of get key down. Get key down is true for one frame, and that is the first frame that you press the key. So get key down is true for one frame. Get key is true for every frame. So as long as you're holding it down, it's true. So you can see it's not rotating now. If I press A, we rotate that way. I let go, it stops. Press D, rotate that way. And let go, and it stops. So just like that, you've added a circle strafe functionality to your game. And as an added bonus, let's do one more thing. In the tutorial previous to this one in this playlist, I demonstrated how to have one object facing another. Now, part of the rotate around command, you're inherently always facing the object. But what if you want something to face back at you? So say this is also trying to face you. So what we'd do is you'd right-click, create C#, and we'll call this enemy con because it's going to control the enemy. We'll click on our cube and we'll drag and drop the enemy con script. So we now open that up. And in the enemy script, we're going to do something similar as far as we need to create a variable to make the enemy aware of the camera. So just as we made the camera aware of the enemy, we're going to do the opposite. So let's get rid of the remark commands. Public, transform, and we'll call this player OBJ, although it's technically a camera in this case. And then with every frame, again, update occurs every single frame, we want the cube to face the camera. So that's also part of transform. It's called look at. And like I said, if you want a more in-depth analysis of this, the two tutorials previous to this one in this playlist, I do a deeper dive on how to use look at. And it's simple. You just say, look at that object. Now, last time, earlier in the video, I forgot to actually create the linkage. So let's not forget to do it this time. So the script adds this variable. And so now we're going to take, in this case, the camera, because that's what we want the cube to face. So when we run this, doesn't look any different yet, but now when we rotate, you can see this continues to face us. So just as you're circling around it, it's continuing to face you. Okay, so I think that should about do it for this video. If you have any questions, please just leave a comment. If you want to see more content like this, just leave a like. And again, as always, I hope that this was helpful.